Right. Sorry I started a little bit late. I'm going to give everyone a couple of minutes to get through here. Still trying to work in the time, how to finish up the presentation and other such. Still trying to get everything situated, but we'll get there. Right. Sorry I started a little bit late. Uh, so I will. Let's see, how far are we in right now? We're about 7 minutes. We'll start here in about 2 minutes or so, just to make sure everyone else has the opportunity to come in. I did start a little bit late. I need to be more, need to get better timing on this. But I shall return. We'll start in a couple of minutes here. Let me get everything situated, make sure I got everything set up properly. Hey, hey, Amanda. Yeah, Amanda, I'm just giving everyone a couple of minutes to log in since I started a little bit late. So we'll get started here in a second. Afternoon. let's see. Yeah, about 13 minutes in. Okay, so yeah, let's go ahead and get started here. Um, Thank y'all for joining us today. Amanda, I see you there. Hopefully, I think Eric might be here with us as well. It didn't. Sometimes it shows who logs in, and sometimes it doesn't. So I'm not sure. Go ahead and spout off whoever if you want to. Say who's all here. I know Amanda's here. I think Eric might be here. Oh, and probably one's me. So yeah, probably the other one's Eric. So, well, it's good to see you guys again, or at least I guess talk to you again. Hopefully, we'll get more people situated as time goes on. I heard, which is kind of weird, because a lot of people were saying that they were okay with Sunday afternoon, but I'm not sure what the deal is on that. But that's okay. It's kind of we just got to get in the routine here. So today we're going to continue on. We're going to talk just briefly. Obviously, there's a lot of things to cover in Ásatrú, in the belief system. Okay. All right, Katie. Well, thank you for letting us know. And welcome. I'm glad you could join us. I didn't know he had to work today. So that's good to know. All right. Well, I'm glad you're here. And, everyone can, we'll be able to view this at a later date anyway. So that's kind of why I have it on streaming and everything anyway. So that way, everyone's schedule doesn't work up. I have Monday through Friday, so it's easy for me on Sundays. But we will work everything out. Today, we're just going to kind of briefly delve into some of the topics of Ásatrú, the basics of it. I'm actually going to have probably a couple of overview series. Today is going to be, because I don't want to have them too long of sessions here. Everyone's got their stuff to do during the day. But today we're going to do a part 1 overview. So, because there's a lot of topics to cover, a lot of terminology, and even with the overview, I found that this is probably going to take us the hour just to do just even some of the overview. Because I also want to be able to answer questions and ask questions and discuss as we go along. Hey, welcome, Eric. I know you're at work, so if I see you in and out, I know why. But you have to excuse me. I'm actually eating some of my tatty cones. I don't know if y'all saw my post, but I made some tatty scones, and they actually turned out pretty well. But as we go on here, basics of Ásatrú, an overview part 1. So I've tried to break this down into little manageable chunks because there is a lot of topics to cover. Today, we're just kind of briefly describe and discuss what Ásatrú is. 3 perspectives on the belief system. There's 3 different, 3 general perspectives, and we'll discuss that today. Then we're going to discuss a little bit about the Blot ensemble, and finally do kind of a brief overview of some of the gods and goddesses, and we will discuss Odin and Sif and Thor a little bit more in depth, but not quite as much. And then we'll give a brief rundown of everything else, and we'll discuss these at later dates. This overview section is going to be today and next week, and maybe the following week. Will just give us some of the overview aspects of different topics that we will be getting more in depth with, because we can cover gods and goddesses that could take us a month to do. There's so much information to go over with the myths and everything like that. So I just wanted to give a brief overview of everything. So let's get started here. I have my coffee here. Cafe. Yeah, service isn't that great. My service isn't that great as well. That's why it's kind of in and out. Hopefully y'all can hear and see me okay. But we'll get better as we go along. So, what is Ásatrú? Well, it started out as being called Our Way, before the Christianization of a lot of the northern European countries. It was just a belief system. They didn't really follow a name. It was just called, our way, or it was just a belief system. It really didn't have a particular name. You know, and then once the Christians started to convert, the Northern Europeans, then it actually had to have a name. So with that, so one of the first terms that was kind of recognized was called pagan, and that it just simply means Pangus, or from the countryside. It's a general term, but we discussed this last week a little bit. Okay, Amanda, yeah, I understand. I will, well, hopefully you don't lose too much. If you can't watch, you can watch it later. That's why I like this. But, so Pangus, it was one of the first terms used, and really, as we discussed last week, is just generalized for anything that's not Abrahamic in belief. So you have the Islam, Christianity, and Catholicism all follow the monotheistic God, Yahweh, or Jehovah. And the term pagan was used for anything that wasn't in that belief system. So it's a very generalized term. You have everything from Wiccan to Druidry, Ásatrú's in there, heathenism. You have foreign sale. You have a lot of different things that are in there, not just the Northern European beliefs. So you could even have Buddhism. Buddhism would be considered pagan. Thai, Indonesia, anything that isn't the monotheistic Christian, which is actually kind of dumb because there's more religions than just 3 monotheistic religions, and yet we have to subset ourselves from that term by using that term. It's pretty horrendous, but that's the way our system has been governed. The Christians did a lot to disseminate our belief systems and kind of divide us from who they are. From that, as we discussed, we have heathen. So that generally means people of the heath. It was another term that was used that kind of centralized and focused on the Norse and Germanic deities. So you have, inside of paganism, you have Buddhism and all that, all those different religions. Then you have heathenism, as we discussed earlier or last week, which is more focused on the Germanic aspect of things. So you have that. Then, after heathenism, we go in a little bit further, which is a reconstructed term, Ásatrú, which focuses on a certain set of beliefs, because within heathenism you have different terms for the Norse gods. Like you have Fornsaler, you have the Troth, that's which means faith as well. You have Odinism, you have Theodism, you have all these different terms, and they all. It's almost kind of like, like we discussed last week, almost kind of like the Christian, the Christian, what's that term? The sects, or the different, oh man, that term just blew out of my mind here. But the different denominations, there we go, the different denominations of Christianity. So you have the Baptist, you have the Lutheran, and everyone believes in the monotheistic God, but then they have a little bit different beliefs on how to practice and when to practice, and different topics and values that they hold dear. So Ásatrú in itself is a little bit closer to that. And that's what we follow. Ásatrú is kind of more defined in certain aspects, but heathenism and Ásatrú are they are pretty. They can be used simultaneously, interchangeably. A lot of people do. Like, I consider myself heathen, but I also follow Ásatrú. Mainly, it's a better term to use nowadays. It's more recognizable. The term was started in 1970 and it just generally means true to the gods or true to the Asir. So, within heathenism, you can focus on different Germanic uh, gods, goddesses, and beliefs, but in a general aspect, it follows the same set of principles that we follow as well. Ásatrú is just kind of a more modern term for it, and it kind of uh, it kind of just distinguishes us because there's a lot of bad interpretation of the word heathen in our modern society. So one of the things that I disagree with, actually, if you look up the term heathen, and it's pretty sad because inside of the term heathen and what we've been taught because of our Christianized faith, is it's actually considered. Let me see if I can. I want to give you the accurate. Yeah, it shows up as the synonym to infidel, synonym to an unenlightened person or those lacking culture or moral principles. Even Merriam-Webster considers it uncivilized or irreligious person. So it's been given a really bad name, basically because of the Christianization of our countries, and so the word heathen is actually a synonym, according to our dictionaries, as something that is uncivilized and barbaric, and that's not right. And so I think that's why, just kind of, some people are afraid to use the term heathen. I'm sure as hell not. I wear a shirt that says I'm heathen, and I don't, honestly, I don't care, what they say about me. And it's becoming a little bit more open, the term heathen, especially since the internet and people are getting a lot more accurate information on what we believe and how we believe it. So as we go along here, we'll see that, well, in the future, it might change. I don't know if I can. I'm going to switch out here so you can see that slide there. So future names are unknown. We don't know, the thing about Ásatrú is that, or the old way, as we see, old way, pagan, heathen, Ásatrú, our belief system continually evolves. That's one of the great things about our belief system, because we don't stand stagnant and we change to fit our environment. We're adaptable. We don't just sit still. We're not stuck on some old terms or old texts that we just continually reverence and don't change to adapt to our environment and change to beliefs, because we're always learning, we're always evolving, we're always growing. So those things are irrefutable. We have to change. We have to change to new information and new knowledge. And we're continuing to get more information and more knowledge as we go along. Let's go on here. Hopefully, it's very confusing with the terminology. So I hope I've opened up and you can kind of understand a little bit about it. It's so generalized because there are a lot of different ways to go about it, and each individual person has a different definition or a different belief, and that is actually one of the positives of our belief system, is because everybody can interpret it in their own way, and there's nothing wrong with that. In the Christian mindset, you always have these set of beliefs, these set of rules that, you have to follow it this way, and if you're doing it wrong. No, that's not how we do it. If it makes sense to you, use it. If it doesn't, don't use it. Because when it comes down to it, it's your path. It's not my path. I can only give you knowledge or information on how to do these things, or how to, maybe a different perspective, I would say, really. Based upon my research, or based upon certain credentials that I find and hold. But it's always about discussion and learning and growing, but it's always your path, not anybody else's. So some generalized beliefs of Ásatrú. First of all, we are a reconstructionist, polytheistic, animistic faith with a cultural and religious experiences based on our pre-Christian Northern European ancestors. That is a mouthful. So let's break it down here. We are reconstructionists. What that means is that a lot of our sources are we don't have a lot of sources per se. One first-hand experiences or first-hand resources from the old times. We do have some, like the Prose Edda, the Poetic Edda, from which are derived from the Codex Regius, and we have archaeology to help us with that. But for the most part, a lot of our belief systems have been modified, changed, destroyed by the Christians over conversions, and some of that information has been lost, and we will never get it back, honestly. Some of those things that we hold dear, we will never be able to get back. And that's just the way it is. I wish that I could say that we know 100% how everything works, but well, it looks like we lost connection here. Okay, now we're good. Yeah, my internet's not so good. I apologize. I'm with AT&T here in Chickasha, and yeah, our internet is not very good. They've been having a lot of troubles lately. I'm actually thinking about switching over to Suddenlink because they don't even reimburse us for our lost service, and it's in and out. It's only up to 10 megabits per second down. So it's very, very slow, and we're paying the same price that we would be if we got 50 megabits down for Suddenlink. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Hopefully, here in the next, well, our contract ends in January, so we might have to deal with this for a little bit. But this will be uploaded to YouTube as well, and it will have hopefully not be so laggy. So anyway, so with Reconstructionists, what we mean by that is that since we don't have any solid proof, I would say we do have text, but as far as some of these things, we do have to do our homework. We have to kind of think about, look about, do our homework. That's, as we discussed last week, Ásatrú or heathenism is the religion with homework, because there's no one set way to believe, and we constantly have to adjust. So that's what Reconstructionist means. It just means that we're reconstructing our faith based upon the text that we have, and there's, because of the Christianization and because of the lost belief systems. So we're polytheistic. We believe in multiple gods. We don't believe there's just one deity. And for the most part, we believe that, that with the term God, we have to also change the way in which we understand God, because as a monotheistic, we believe we have to bow down to him, and we're his servants, and everything's for his will and his glory and his passion. Yeah, I came from the Christian background. I was going to be a pastor, and that's one thing I couldn't understand, is that you have this all-powerful, all-knowing God, but you're more like a slave, and I really didn't like that. It's always his will, and I have to do everything for him. That's a slave mindset. I'm not a slave. Our ancestors, our gods, our deities, and gods and goddesses, they're our ancestors. They're our family. They're our kin. We honor and respect them, but we do never bow down to them at all. We reverence them. We honor them. We sacrifice to them. And that has something to do about gift giving and giving and taking, and we'll talk about that later down the road. But they're never, we never bow down to them. They are here to help us, to guide us, to give us strength in times of need, but we are not their servants. Animistic faith. So we believe in an animal viewpoint. Actually, I think maybe I should click some of these. I believe I have actually some notes here as we go along. Yes, Reconstructionist religion. There we go. I figured I get to talking, so I forget that I have little PowerPoints here. The term is new, but our religion is old. As I said, it's the term of Ásatrú is new, but our faith, our belief is not. It's only that We have lost, I would say, evidence of our belief system. We do have some, but a lot of it's been changed. Um, even with the poetic Eddas from Sturluson Sturluson or the prose Eddas, those may have been prone to interpretation and changed to fit the Christian perspective and viewpoint. So we have to take everything with a grain of salt. So we draw in most of our practices from material of the Anglo-Saxon and Viking times, but those beliefs are based on millennia of evolving folk traditions. And yes, so like I was saying, we do have texts, but some of them are hard to, it's not like we have a central Bible. We have to kind of piece everything together. So we're an earth-based religion. We honor the earth and all it holds. We are definitely the earth-based. We believe that Mother Earth is our mother. We believe that we should honor the earth. We should respect it and everything in it as well. And we'll get a little bit more into that on my next slide. So we're ancestral-based. We honor the Disir, the foremothers who guard the family line, and this is a core belief of the Ásatrú. The Disir are our ancestors, our mothers, and actually, according to Sykes, who wrote an interesting book that is something that you should probably read, and obviously, like I stated, these are all just up to you. You have to come up with your own understanding of it, but he wrote a good book called Seven Daughters of Eve, which talks about the genetic ancestry of Northern European people. I haven't actually, to be honest, I haven't even got to read this book yet. But from the belief line, it does go into stating that 95% of Native Europeans are descended from one of 7 women who lived between 10,000 and 45,000 years ago. So that's one book that I have been trying to get into reading, but I do have a lot to read. I'm working full-time and going to school full-time for cybersecurity. So my time is very limited, and I try to read what I can, but I haven't got to that book yet. But the central idea of having a family line or having family ties to one another is central to our belief system. We follow a family-focused, community-based ethos with kinship ties, like we were talking about. So we are very oriented to each other. Now, animism. Now, every weight has a sort of soul or energy. And what that means, what is a weight? A weight is every being. Every being in the universe is considered what we call a weight. And that could be inanimate or animate objects. So humans are weights, spirits of the lands are weights, animals are also weights. So animism does not equate to always being able to communicate in human form, but simply that the animate and inanimate things in the universe have a spiritual component. So that's what we're talking about right there, is that it doesn't mean, with animism, we don't mean that we can talk to animals in a human English form. What this means is animism, we believe that everything has a spirit, a soul, and energy. Everything in the universe is connected at some level, and we have to respect and honor everything within that. Well, it looks like we lost a couple of people, but that's okay. We'll keep on going. I was hoping to have a lot more discussion and talk, but I understand it is kind of hard with this streaming service. Yep, and it got interrupted again, so hopefully we will be back online shortly. So we believe in many gods and goddesses. They are our ancestors, as we spoke about earlier. They are our ancestors, not our masters. We do not worship the gods and goddesses, but we do honor them and ask them for guidance and help. And we also offer sacrifices to them as a way to honor, respect, and open up gift giving. As we were talking about before, this is being able to, the concept of giving and taking. Okay, so there's three perspectives of beliefs. The first one is folkish. So this term actually is kind of misconstrued sometimes, and it's been changing. It's been evolving. The term has been evolving. So in its original term, folkish just meant tradition, to follow the traditional way of doing things. But as time has evolved, it has been it now is being kind of twisted towards more of a racist and political ideology. So, with the folkish belief, one of the main belief systems or perspectives of the belief system is that only those with Northern European descent can practice Ásatrú. This comes about in some organizations, such as the Ásatrú Alliance, the Ásatrú Folk Assembly, and many other organizations, especially within the Odinist community as well. There, especially with Elsa Christensen, she got a lot of the information from Rudd Mills, I believe, actually, and she started the first what they call Odinist Fellowship. And she believed more in she utilized folkish beliefs or the ideology of Northern European ancestors only being able to follow the belief system. Now, some still use the term folk. Like I still use the term folk in some sort of aspect as to show family ties, because folk has many terms, but folkish in its general sense, if you were to, if for the most part in modern heathenism, to show a folkish belief is usually stating that Northern descent can only practice Ásatrú. So that basically means any white people can follow. So if your wife was a Jew, then according to the folkish, in a generalized sense, that she would never be able to follow or be accepted into Ásatrú. On the other end of the spectrum, we have, let me move my capture here. So let me go to my slides. Anyone can practice regardless of ethnic heritage and are inclusive to cultural syncretism, which basically means blending and changing the beliefs to fit their cultural background. So with syncretism, hopefully I'm saying that right, but with syncretism, it means that you can, for example, if with a universalist perspective, even if they follow Ásatrú, if they wanted to bring in some beliefs about Wiccan, say they wanted to bring in the belief of the three crones or the three mothers, then that would be accepted. So they almost take a heathenist perspective as well. So they kind of a pagan perspective. Basically, they can pick and choose any pagan belief system and kind of meld it with Ásatrú. Now, sometimes that's not with everybody. Sometimes a universalist belief system merely just believes that anybody can follow, but not necessarily change anything. So the term, and that's where it is confusing, is that sometimes they do mean that you can change things. Sometimes it just means that we accept everybody. But in its general sense, it basically means that you can take Ásatrú and anyone can join, anyone can do anything in its most, I guess, far-fetched extremist views, that you can change anything you wanted. And that is something that can be dangerous as well. But I do understand, as far as the universalist aspect, I believe that everybody should be able to be accepted in Ásatrú as long as they have a dedication to the gods. Which brings us to our next point. Tribalist. Let me get my camera here. Sometimes it's easier to. There it is. Okay, so in a tribalist perspective, which the Ásatrú Fellowship pretty much falls under, we believe that anybody can join Ásatrú. We believe that anyone should be able to, as we discussed last week about the ethnic cultures not necessarily just being all white. The god, actually, Odin himself was born of a giant. And you have a lot of different, even within the Norse myths, you have a lot of different perspectives that show that to follow Ásatrú, you don't necessarily have to be white per se, because you even have the Asir, the Vanir, you have the elves, the dwarves, you have all these different races, and they were all accepted by Odin to join into his battlefield. He did not discriminate, and neither should we. Even in the earlier times, you had a lot of those things to where lots of cultures, the world is ever changing. And just to say, yes, I mean, yes, we do. Our main belief did come from Northern Europe, but we are so intermingled now. And there's nothing to say that it's just white people or Northern Europeans should be able to follow. That's just the belief system that we did follow. But if we are to believe that Odin and Thor and Frey and Frigg and Sif, all of those are our ancestors, then why should we cut out anybody that honestly and truly believes in them and feels a calling to them? Because one of the things that the folkish do equate to is that, with the racist perspective, is the fact that only, Stephen McNallen's metagenics, he talks about, there's a genetic code that predestines your belief system, and I don't that's a bunch of hogwash. There's nothing with genetics there's no genetic gene that's a religious genetic gene. That's just hogwash. But we also do believe in the tribalist perspective that we don't want to accept anyone that is just wanting to use it for their own. Use it and abuse it, I would say. Kind of like the Sunday Christians. We don't want heathens or Ásatruers following or spouting Thor's name, but not taking the time to understand him, to sacrifice to him, to get guidance and understanding our belief system. That's how I see the Universalists. Is I see them as, okay, well, we're going to claim that we are part of the Ásatrú culture, that we believe in Ásatrú, we believe in Odin and them, but we're not going to follow it per se. We're going to wear our Mjolnir, and we're going to cut our hair, and we're going to do this, but we don't care about our ancestors. We don't care about learning the history. We don't care about, or we're going to change it to fit our needs. We're going to start implementing this, and that's not right either. So with a tribalist perspective, we basically state that anyone can follow, but they have to have a dedication to the gods and goddesses. They have to dedicate themselves to learning, to growing, to experiencing, and following certain path, because there is a certain path that we do follow in a generalized sense, and it's almost like mocking us if you just claim yourself as following Ásatrú or following the heathen gods, but then don't even know their names. Yeah, you can quote Odin and Thor and Sif, and you can say their names, but you don't perform bloats, you don't perform symbols, you don't have an altar, you don't pray to the gods. And yes, we do pray. It's a little bit different than the Christians, but we do pray to the gods. We talk to them, and we have just central general ideas. So hopefully that gives you an overview of that. I've kind of rambled on a little bit, but in a general sense, that's what it is. Folkish means that anyone only those of northern descent can follow. Universalist means anybody can follow and can change things as they please. And tribalist is kind of somewhere in the middle there. It says that we believe in the folkish beliefs. We believe that there should be some sort of dedication to the gods, but we also believe that it should be open to anybody that is willing to be dedicated to the gods. So bloat and stumble, and no one's on right now. I guess my streaming service is not working very well, so I am not able to answer any questions. I hope I could correct that, but we will continue to go on here. So bloat and stumble. A bloat relates to the word, which means blood, and now that does not necessarily mean that you're going to do, like we were talking about last week, we don't kill babies, we don't do all that. Now in times, blood sacrifices are acceptable in some form, but for the majority of the part, we only do sacrificing in a non-blood related. It merely means right there, not necessarily a blood sacrifice. It can be pouring out a drink or forging something and dedicating it to the gods and goddesses. So sacrifice is not necessarily blood related. It is all about intention. So we actually started a garden out in our front yard. And our first harvest, the first fruit, we had one little tomato, and actually it was kind of sad because our yard is not protected yet, and it's in our front yard actually, and we were getting tomatoes. We had a tomato, and then it just disappeared the next day, and so we ended up finding out, I think it's the animals, and we need to put a snake out there, but we still haven't. But we actually did get one tomato, and that first tomato we put on our altar and sacrificed it to the gods and goddesses as a rite to honor them and to thank them for for helping and for their guidance, and to honor our ancestors. So it's almost the same sense of, you sacrifice in order to honor, and not necessarily that you're going to get something back in a sense. It's not all about, oh, well, if I give this out, then I'm going to get it back threefold, like the Wiccans believe. We don't necessarily believe that way. I mean, as far as, me personally, I don't believe that if I throw it out there and I'll get it back 3 times. That's almost a Christian perspective in a sense. That, if you give to God, if you give to Yahweh, then He'll give you back tenfold. I believe that it can bring back to you. But in my perspective, you also see a lot of these evil people, murderers and all these certain things, which is a very subjective term in itself. But they're getting away with, say pedophiles and stuff. That, to me, that is evil. We do believe in some sort of evil, but that'll be for another time. But say, they go out and, they don't necessarily get back threefold in a sense. I mean, they're never losing, but they will eventually. So, there is certain aspects in nature. It doesn't always work, that way, but we give sacrifices to honor them in a more generalized sense. So, in symbols, that's a little bit different than a bloat. A bloat is about sacrificing our works or honoring them. In a symbol, that's, the bloat. I always say that the bloat is for the gods. The symbol is for the people. But it also does honor our ancestors and each other, but it's more about the community. So bloats are sacrifices to the gods. Symbols are about forging bonds with the community. It is a ritualized drinking occasion. My favorite. So we get together and we have a cup of meat or ale or beer or whiskey, whatever you want to do. It's not about the drink itself. It's more about the bonds that you're getting with each other. So it's less ritualized, and I put ritualized there, but it is not ritualized as we would perceive it to be. It is kind of just a general. It is ritualized in the sense that it follows a certain aspect of things. So there's typically 3 rounds, and that's the ritualization of it. It is kind of standardized, but not standardized. It's not meant to be standardized. It's more meant to be a bond between people, but there is some sort of ritualization between it. So in the first round, whenever you're drinking with each other, this is to welcome the gods and the goddesses. It's to honor them. It's to drink to them, to welcome them into our inner guard, welcome them to the group, to the meeting, or the symbol, because they are there with us. Our ancestors, whether whether they're our ancestors or the gods and goddesses, and that's what our next round is for, is the ancestors or our heroes. Sometimes we honor the heroes of our past, even if they aren't necessarily our direct ancestor line. And the third is for it's considered open. So our third round to each other is about even bragging. Bragging is okay as long as it is true. We have a thing about our oaths and about truth. Truth is one of our main core values. So bragging is always acceptable. And there's nothing wrong with bragging, because you should be proud of what you do. But you shouldn't let that get to your head as well, because that can be dangerous as well. There's always a fine line. I always see life as not this black and white. I see it as gray. Kind of like the same ways we have the three perspectives. So we have folkish, and then we have universalist. They both have truths. They both have very good perspectives on life. However, more times than not, it's somewhere in the middle that the truth occurs. And so on that third round again, as well as bragging, we do have stories, songs, and toasts. Let me go back to that real quick. So just to and these are just generalized overview, as we stated. We're just going over some of the basic things here. Even with a symbol, I would like to say that it's not for everybody. Say you have a coworker. Well, your coworker is not necessarily going to come in for your symbol. These are for your inner guard. These are for people that you believe or have fellowship with, for your kindred, the Ásatrú fellowship. Any organization that you're close to together, you have a symbol with. It's not a drinking party. It's not something that you just go out and just get drunk. That's not what it's there for. It has a deeper purpose. It has a meaning about culture, about forming those bonds. It's about talking with each other, about understanding each other and getting to know one another. So I guess you would see it as a social event, but there's a deeper roots to that. It's not just about getting drunk. And we will go deeper in depth on bloats and symbols, and some of the rituals that they provide as well in later dates. So next and final for today is gods and goddesses. So we will be going way in depth in certain aspects, which I think I'm gonna have to have a one session per god, and I might not do this on a live, because this live is really meant for discussion, which has kind of been crappy because of my streaming, but we'll try. But I'll probably have a series in which we'll discuss more in depth about Odin, Thor, Sif, because we will have to go in and look at different pieces of the puzzle. And they're very complicated, just like a human is. Very complicated, lots of complex themes, events that happen, marriages, just a lot of different things. But I'm going to give you a brief overview of some of them. First is Odin, which this is the original Norse spelling, for those that are confused. The original spelling would be, as far as my understanding from Jackson Crawford, if I remember correctly, is Odin. That D with a slash through it right there is pronounced with a TH, I believe. So it's Odin. And that's the original Norse. But I think in here it is kind of hard to write that, so it also was anglicized in some of my writing here as Odin. He is the same, one and the same. I like to use the Old Norse when I can. He is considered the All-Father. He was married to Frigga. And there is some controversy, and I think I even mentioned it here in my notes, is that some heathens do believe that Frigga and Freya were the same. But there's a lot of controversy over that. So we might get into that whenever we discuss her later in the future, but we won't right now. So he and his brothers Vili and Ve slayed Ymir to create Midgard, and that's a topic in its own, and we're going to be discussing that in the cosmology along with the 9 worlds and such. A topic for another day. One of the main events that he did do was hang himself from the tree for 9 nights and days. And he was wounded by his spear, Gungnir, in order to gain the realms. So, that is one of the main things that we'll be talking about. When we get into that, we will see the runes. We will discuss what they are and how he gained them. But that is one of the main topics that we will be discussing. Here we are. He gives his eye to Mimir in order to gain wisdom. This is a very understood topic. That's why he's called the One-Eyed Father, or the One-Eyed God, is because in order to gain wisdom, he plucked out his own eye. Some believe it was the right eye, some believe it's the left. It's not really stated in the sagas, but one of his eyes is gone. And what he did to that, and that speaks to even what we were talking about before, is sacrifice. He sacrificed his eye, his own personal being, in order to gain more wisdom. And that's something to learn. In life, everything comes from, we don't believe that nothing comes from something. In a general sense, I guess, something could have. But for the most part, stuff comes from something. It's a sacrifice. So in order to gain wisdom, Odin had to give up his eye. He had to give up something of himself in order to gain that higher wisdom. And we'll talk about that even more, but the pros and cons of that. Because by giving up his eye, he lost a personal, physical perspective. But he gained a more spiritual perspective as well. So we can take it as 2 different aspects, and we'll delve into that. It's a very interesting topic when it comes to physical versus spiritual understanding. He is the leader of the wild hunt, which occurs in the winter. We'll be talking about that whenever we get into the holidays and some of our feast days and such. He has 2 wolves, Geri and Freki. Geri and Freki. He has the 2 ravens, which most of you probably know, Hugin and Munin. His 2 ravens, Thought and Memory. And that is something that if you've noticed right here, everything that is of importance has a name in the Norse culture. So this cup, if it was my cup, because you can't just go. Back in the old day, you couldn't just go to Walmart and buy 10 cups. You had to you had to make it yourself from the things of this earth, or you had to pay somebody to make it, which it took a lot more time. This cup might take a couple of hours to make. I'm not sure, but this could be built, in seconds now. But so everything that has purpose in someone's life, for the normality, they wouldn't, unless they were super, super rich. They would have 1 cup, 1 spoon, 1 bowl, 1 plate, 1 house, 1 cow, they would have more perspective on things because they honored everything. And that's why they have names. That's why Hugin and Munin, Geri and Freki, even As we'll see here in a little bit, his spear had a name because everything that was of importance had a name. And it's something we've lost, and something you will understand from the Ásatrú, from delving into it, is that everything of importance has a name. And we'll also get into something called kinnings, which is something that represents something. It's almost kind of a metaphor or a way to describe something that isn't necessarily that thing, which is kind of confusing right now, but we'll discuss that later. So, there we go again. A high seat. Hildskalgulf. I'm not very good at pronouncing these, so hopefully someone will pronounce it properly for me. But his high seat even had a name. His 8-legged horse, Sleipnir, was spawned by Loki. And we will get into Loki a little bit, and I will discuss the reason why we might not get into him very much. There is a lot of controversy over Loki. He's not mentioned in the sagas very much, and there's a lot of interpretation when it comes to Loki, and actually a lot of Ásatrú groups. They find it just a topic that isn't discussed very much due to that, because it is very controversial. But we'll delve into that later. Other names for Odin is Wold, Wotan, Grimnir, Genglier, Hredan, Dek, Halmbreri, Sangeta. Oh, and that's it. There's actually a lot of names. I believe he has like over 100 different names that he goes by, and that's what we're talking about kinnings as well. I believe this would be considered not necessarily kinnings, but different names. So with his names, it shows his different personalities of how he believes, how he represents things. And so with those, like as you see here, Thek, he's the welcome one. Sangital, he's the truth finder. And there's a lot of other ones that y'all know about, but I didn't mention here because they're more well known. And I just wanted to give a couple of different ones that maybe were not recognized as much. But like I said, I think he has over 100 different names. And that shows his different personalities and such. Moving on here, let's see, how far are we going here? We're a little over an hour now, and so we will try to move along here, which we did only have about 20 minutes of waiting time, so about 40 minutes, maybe 50 minutes, so we're getting pretty close. Okay, so Frigga, also known as Frigg, she is the wife of Odin, the mother of Balder, and from her Proto-Indo-European root of Pri is meaning to love. And that's why she's also often called the beloved of Odin. She believes her root word means to love. Now, and this is where we were talking about earlier about Frigga and Freya. Friday is sometimes referred to as Frigga's Day, and some refer to it as Freya's Day. And we'll go delve into that a little bit more. But this is where the confusion comes in with Frigg. Some believe that she was the same one, or the same deity as Frigga and Freya, which there's not a whole lot of evidence for this, but some state it. And we'll delve into that. But this also does go into, what we were talking about before, is the fact that everything is kind of up to interpretation. Some things we just can't prove, and we have to just discern our own selves as best as we can. She is best known as mother and wife, and she even helps the Lengobords win a battle by tricking her husband into favoring them. So she was pretty wise, but she was also a little sneaky too, which I forgot to mention about Odin. He was actually pretty sneaky as well. He seemed to be someone who got his way. He is a loving father, but as as our ancestor, he, as we stated, there's a difference between them being our masters and having faults. All of our gods and goddesses have pros and cons to them. They were almost humanistic in a sense, but they had greater power than we do. Spiritual power, I guess you would say. They had power. Obviously, they're gods and goddesses, but they have the same type of faults, I would say. Even Odin uh, had sex with other women as well while he was married to Frigga. Um, so he was very promiscuous as well. Even though he was the father of wisdom, he still was promiscuous and sometimes downright uh, self-serving, I would say, or greedy. But that's a topic we can discuss as we go along. But uh, one thing to understand about the gods and goddesses is they're not perfect like the Christian God per se, because nobody is perfect. Even gods and goddesses are not perfect, uh, and that's something hard to understand based upon our Christian beliefs or our Christian past. I would say uh, is God presents Himself, even Yahweh presents Himself uh, to be all powerful, all knowing, loving God. But if you look at the text, He was even a jealous God. Uh, and I'm not really going to discuss Christianity that much, but even Yahweh, he was a jealous God, and I mean, if you think about it, he was a murderous God too. He killed all, according to the Holy Bible, he he killed all of mankind in the flood, according to their belief. Uh, so, saying that for saying that Jehovah's all loving and always loving, that was kind of a lie that the Christians tell as well, because he was a murderous God too. He killed all of mankind, and they say, oh well, it's because we were sinning. Well, he still did it, right? Whether you call it because they were sinning. I mean, to my eyes, that would be almost a sense of, okay, my children are going to disobey me, so I'm going to kill them, but that's okay because I'm their father and I love them. So, I mean, you can, yeah, we'll get past that, because that's something that I don't really. I'll delve in a little bit, but that's something that I'm not going to discuss here. But the point being that gods and goddesses, they do have faults, and they do have pros to that as well. Frigga, even right there, married Odin's two brothers after Odin's disappearance. Odin disappeared. We'll get that into a further date of why and when and how and what book that was in. But once they disappeared, she actually married. I can't remember if it was both her brothers or if it was just one. I can't remember. But the fact is that she did. She was still technically married to Odin, and then still married, as far as I'm understanding. I can't remember that story very much, but we can definitely discuss that later down the road. So a lot of the things that we know about Frigga, because she hasn't mentioned a whole lot. She's mentioned kind of a backstory, and she has many names as well. A lot of her attributes that we know about come from her handmaidens. And some of her handmaidens included Ir, which actually a lot of heathens, a lot of heathens are starting to hear about Ir a little bit more, but she isn't mentioned a whole lot in the sagas as well. But she is a goddess of healing, and she was also possibly a Valkyrie. She is said to actually have drank with Odin in his hall. She's a very interesting character, but there's not much known about Ir. But that is someone that you can pray to or sacrifice to, or provide a sacrifice to for healing. Some do actually go to Freya for healing as well, because she was a goddess of love. So it does go into who you want to believe with Ir. She is one of the lesser known goddesses, but she definitely, I guess, would say is having a comeback because more research that's been able to be opened up to her. Let's see, Fola. She was considered a virgin, and Frigga gave secrets to her. Uh, Luffen grants or rejects marriages. Saga. Now, this is another one that we were talking about, is that may be one of Frigga's bynames, because Saga actually drank mead with Odin, and it almost seemed in some of the text, it almost seemed kind of the same personalities of Frigga, and so some do associate Saga as being one of the bynames of Frigga, and we'll delve into that and kind of discuss that as we go. Solvin is she turns the minds of men into love. Var hears the oaths of people make, and there's many more handmaidens. As you can see, even with, and that's why I say that we're going to have a whole, several sections. We're going to have to pretty much have a whole section or a whole talk for each individual god and goddesses, because there's so much to discuss about them. But Frigga is seen as the goddess of the hearth, the home, and social order. She is also a spinner and weaver of cloth. So she was into many things. Thor. Original spelling of Thor from the Old Norse. 2 R's, and that's where I get my name from. I did it from the Old Norse name, but we are going to anglicize it here, because sometimes it's hard to type with our English keyboards. But he was the son of Odin and Jod. He is a slayer of giants and a friend of man. His hammer is Mjolnir, which, if you do not know, that is Mjolnir. It's his hammer, and it is used as, it's not something like the cross. It's more of, it can be used as a protection, I would say, but it's more of just, it's between you and Thor. We use it as a way to honor him, because he is considered the protector of Midgard. So it is a protection thing, but not so much that if we believe we don't have Mjolnir around our necks, we're not going to per se be, if we don't have it, we're not going to be protected. But it's something that we carry with us to remind us about Thor and to honor him. He was married to Sif. He has 2 sons, Modi and Magni. He fought Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, and he is also Thor's mortal enemy. And we will talk about him more. And Jormungandr is Loki's child as well, which is a really interesting topic, and which is why Loki's kind of controversial, because he also had many many different species of children. Very interesting topic. But in Ragnarok, Thor will kill Jormungandr, but he will die himself as well. Some notable things that Thor did was he wrestles with Ellie, old age. There's actually a story where he goes to Utgard, I believe. No, Utgard Loki. And Utgard Loki challenges him to a couple of challenges. One of them is to drink out of a mead horn, which actually is part of the sea, so he was unable to do that. Then he fights with old age Ellie, and there was a third one, and I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. But we'll delve in that as well. He has 2 goats, Teeth Gnasher and Teeth Grinder. I'm not going to try to pronounce those because I have no idea. I guess it's Tangrinsner and Tanjoster. Being English speaking, I'm still gaining my Norse, German, just different dialects of the Norse. And the Norse have a very distinct, almost like a Scottish, I would say. It's really, because I'm Scottish as well. I'm, as we discussed, I'm at least 16% Scottish. I think I'm closer to a quarter. But either way, some of the language is it's harder for us to understand or to speak if you're not part of the North European. We understand more of the anglicized, so I apologize. So he had those 2 goats that he has. Sometimes he'll eat them and for his nourishment. There's some sagas that he kills them for nourishment, and the reason why he does this is because they're reborn every day. He had two bondservants, Thialfi and Ruskva. He is the protector of Midgard, and he can be impatient and unwise at times. So it kind of speaks to a lot of us. He is strong and courageous and battle ready, but sometimes impatient and unwise, unlike his father Odin. Some other gods and goddesses that we will discuss later. And this is, I believe this is my last slide, so we'll finish this up here. Yeah, we're about an hour, 20 minutes in, so basically an hour. Sif is wife to Thor. Frey, fertility and prosperity of the earth. Freya, nature, love, and sexuality. Tyr, one-handed sky god. Hulda, the spinner. Njord, father of Frey and Freya. Nerthus, some believe, is the mother of Frey and Freya, but it's actually kind of controversial. It comes from accounts of Tacitus. Forgot how to pronounce his name. But he wrote a book called Germania, which talked about the German gods and goddesses, and there's some controversy over Nerthus, but again, we'll go over that later. Heimdall he guards Asgard with the Bifrost Bridge. Balder is the son of Frigga and Odin. Hel is the daughter of Loki and a giantess, Angorboda. Forseti is the son of Balder and Nanna. Adunia is the keeper of the golden apples, who we will discuss in depth, because she's actually one of the main, one of the bigger goddesses, and the only reason why the gods and goddesses are able to, according to myths, that they are able to stay alive is because of Adunia's apples. So she plays a major role. Bragi is the husband of Adunia. Then you have Aegir, I believe Aegir. He has a hall under the sea. He's also known as a brewer. There is a story about him as well. And he is a giant. Ran is Aegir's wife. And apparently she, according to some myths and some books, she collects artifacts, or she's a kind of scavenger of the sea. In was it not Percy Jackson, Rick Riordan's book. Rand collected hubcaps and such, which is a very interesting take on her. Skadi is the son of Thiassi. She is also known as the snowshoe goddess. Then we have Loki, as we discussed before. He's not mentioned much in the sagas, and very highly controversial, but he is also known as Odin's sworn brother. There's not a lot of backing for that, but we'll discuss that. Sigyn is Loki's wife and mother to Narfi and Nari. So there it is. We've taken about an hour so far. Hopefully these streams have been helpful and informative. I know we go by quickly. I'm trying to find a way so that everyone can discuss, but apparently these streams aren't very good. Hopefully I will look into that. Let me know what y'all think about these streams. Some questions that you have outside of the stream. I know that the streaming part of it is very hard to keep up with, but as we go along, you can at least leave a comment below the post here, and I will try to get the answer to that and respond to you. I'll continue to do this as the weeks go on, every Sunday at noon. I'm trying to get better at the time. Yep, and interrupted again. So I will try to figure this out, try to figure out the best way to go about this. If this stream does help you, please let me know. If it doesn't, please let me know. I want to find a way that we can discuss things in a better format, but it doesn't help anybody if I'm just sitting here talking to myself. So, unless if it does help you, maybe you just have things to do. But if this does help you, let me know, and I will continue. If not, we'll find another format. So again, this is Thor Odinson from the Ásatrú Fellowship. Just to let everyone know, we do have also. I did was able to get AsatrúFellowship.org up. I have a couple of books up there: the culture of the Teutons and the the worldview of the ethical worldview of the Norse people, by Andrew Peters Fors. Very good book to understand the Norse culture. But I also have some of the prose and poetic eddas up there right now. I am continually working on that. I'm going to add these videos up there hopefully soon, and provide some more in-depth and informational pages, so that I'm going to take these videos, put them up on YouTube, have them available there as well, and provide information on the website so you can continue to learn and grow. I know it's easier for me to see things in view. I hope on having a podcast later down the road as well. That's something I do at work all the time, is I'm always listening to different things, different podcasts, and it helps me. So I hope to have that later down the road as well. But let me know what you think about these videos, if I need to stop eating or anything in these, if it distracts you. I just wanted to have these as informal as possible. I'm not very formal. I think it makes it boring. And really, I meant this as a discussion, but with this streaming, it's kind of hard. So we'll figure something out. But I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you back here next Sunday, where we'll go over overview part 2 and go over some more things, such as some of the books that I recommend, as well as maybe some things about bloats and stumbles, and maybe the Norse language. I'm not sure yet. So stick around. Give me some ideas of what I can discuss next week, and I'll see you then.